1 in 6 couples struggle with infertility, and up to 50% of the time, male factor is a part of the equation. In this video, we're going to go over 5 things that men need to stop doing now in order to improve their fertility. I'm Dr. Lora Shahine. I'm a reproductive endocrinologist practicing in Seattle, helping people build families for almost 20 years, and I love teaching. I have a lot of videos here about male factor fertility. I have some videos on how to interpret a semen analysis, how to prepare for a semen analysis, and tips you can do to improve male factor fertility. This video is specifically about 5 things that men should stop doing if they want to conceive. So let's get started. Tip number 1, stop smoking and vaping. The word is out, smoking cigarettes and tobacco is harmful for your overall health. It increases your risk of cardiovascular disease and cancer. Cigarette and tobacco smoking has also been associated with poor male reproductive health. This particular study, looking at the impact of smoking on male factor fertility, showed that smoking, especially cigarettes, was associated with an increased risk of poor sperm parameters, taking longer time to get pregnant, worse outcomes with fertility treatments like IVF, and increased risk of miscarriage. Now, vaping has become extremely popular in the last 10 years, and it's marketed to be safer and healthier than smoking regular cigarettes. There are over 500 brands of e-cigarettes and over 8,000 different flavors you can use with your e-cigarettes. Here's an excellent review study showing that vaping is not safer for male reproductive health. This study breaks down the components that you find in vaping and e-cigarettes that can really harm male factor fertility. The study focuses in on 3 components found in e-cigarettes and vaping that harm male reproductive health. Number 1, nicotine. Nicotine is a vasoconstrictor, and it can increase sexual dysfunction and increase risk of erectile dysfunction. Nicotine also triggers oxidative stress within the testes, and this can be associated with poor sperm parameters, increased DNA fragmentation, and lower testosterone levels. The second component are the flavors that come with vaping and e-cigarettes. These flavor components have been associated with increasing oxidative stress as well. They can change sperm parameters as well as hormonal communication in the male reproductive system. And the third component is heavy metals. So the process of heating the fluid within the vaping contraction can release heavy metals like lead, nickel, and chromium that get straight into your lungs. If you want to conceive, stop smoking and vaping. Tip number 2, stop recreational drugs. This excellent review article goes through the mechanisms of how psychoactive drugs like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, ecstasy, benzodiazepines, oxycodone, and more can impact male reproductive health. Each of these has been associated with erectile dysfunction, poor testosterone levels, poor sperm parameters, and decreased sperm quality. Another recreational drug that is now legal in a lot of the United States, especially the state of Washington where I practice, is marijuana. And marijuana is felt to be safe, and it's used medically to help with nausea or insomnia, but there is evidence that regular marijuana use or cannabis use can impact male reproductive health. I have a whole video here on YouTube going through the evidence around cannabis use and sperm motility, function, quality, miscarriage risk, and more. I get a lot of pushback from patients when I talk about cannabis use and reproductive health, but it is something to be aware of. Tip number 3, stop anabolic steroids and testosterone supplements. Some men use anabolic steroids to enhance their physical performance or their physique. It's estimated that 1 in 16 men use anabolic steroids at some point in their lifetime. But what they might not realize is that taking anabolic steroids or testosterone supplements can decrease their fertility. Anabolic steroids can be associated with increased muscle mass and decreased fat. It's also associated with testicular atrophy, impotence, decreased sperm production, and infertility. A recent study in fertility and sterility did show that people who've used anabolic steroids can stop and see sperm regenerate, but there are some cases where it doesn't. Talk to your doctor about your personal situation and see what treatments are available to you if you want to stop anabolic steroids and try to increase your sperm production. Tip number 4, limit exposure to environmental toxins and endocrine disruptors. Common endocrine disruptors are BPA, also bisphenol A, parabens, phthalates, PFAS, and pesticides. A lot of these endocrine disruptors can be found throughout our home and products that we use every day. I learned a lot about the impact of high levels of these endocrine disruptors in our body on our reproductive health when I was doing deep research for my books, my book on integrative fertility, as well as my book on miscarriage and recurrent pregnancy loss. High levels of these endocrine disruptors are associated with poor egg quality, poor sperm quality, increased miscarriage risk, poor success rates with IVF, and it's really important to learn about how these can impact your health. I know it can be scary when you first learn about this. It can be overwhelming. You cannot eliminate your exposure completely, but you can make small changes in your everyday life and in your household that can dramatically decrease your exposure. Here are 3 quick tips that you can do today to decrease your exposure. Tip number 1, wash your fruits and vegetables. Even if they're organic, still wash your fruits and vegetables. They can still be exposed to pesticides and things that can impact your reproductive health. Tip number 2, decrease plastic in your kitchen and what is touching your food. So instead of a plastic water bottle, choose glass or stainless steel. Instead of plastic containers to store your food and leftovers, use glass or stainless steel. The BPA and the phthalates and other chemicals that are used to create the plastic can leach into the food and right into your body and impact your health. And tip number 3, when you have a choice, choose fragrance-free. Fragrance is often code word for parabens and other things that help stabilize that fragrance. It might smell really good, but you don't need it to have clean clothes. So think about fragrance-free laundry detergent, cleaners throughout your house, and products you use on your skin. Tip number 5, stop using a hot tub. Heat exposure has been associated with poor sperm parameters and poor reproductive health. An excellent study looking at different types of heat exposure, like saunas, type of underwear, bike riding, laptop use, etc., found that the riskiest behavior is being in a hot tub more than 3 times a month. That is associated with very poor sperm parameters. So if you're trying to have a baby, cut the hot tub use. I hope you've learned something. Now let's recap 5 things that men can stop doing now to improve their fertility. Number 1, stop smoking and vaping. Number 2, stop recreational drugs. Number 3, stop anabolic steroids and testosterone supplements. Number 4, limit exposure to toxins like endocrine disruptors. And number 5, cut down the hot tub use not more than 3 times a month at a minimum. I hope you learned something today. Be sure and like this video if you learned something. Comment with questions that you have. Subscribe to this channel so you get my weekly video on reproductive health. And as always, wishing you love, luck, and pineapples.